Welcome back to Conversations Under the Fig Tree, folks. I am your host, Mehmet Stewart. I'm awfully glad you can be here again with me today. Well, today, folks, we're going to be talking about something rather serious, and it won't be the usual jovial, joking, smiling Mehmet that you know and love. Today, I need to talk about something a little bit serious. There comes a time when when you're looking at the world and you're seeing injustice, you just have to speak up. You got to say something. I think that's today for me. I can't be quiet anymore. So today I'm going to be talking about what's happening here in California, all over the state, but particularly down in Los Angeles. You're seeing it on the news now. And it has a lot to do with the immigration enforcement raids that are occurring throughout the state. So sit back, relax, grab a piece of fruit from the fig tree, and buckle up because it's going to get a little bumpy, folks. But we need to talk about this. It's important stuff. I'm not a political man, and I try to stay out of politics as much as I can. I guess if you were to label me, maybe you'd call me even a quietist. You know, politics is not my thing. I'm more interested in the human condition and about faith and Islam and all these things that I come here and talk about with you all the time. But folks, there comes a time. There comes a time when you got to speak up and you got to say something. And I'm not real happy. I'm not real happy about a lot of things that I see happening in our country. I'm not happy about things that I see happening in the world. I'm desperately, desperately saddened by things happening domestically and internationally right now. And I ask myself, all right, Mehmet, you don't like to talk about politics. Politics really not your bag. But maybe there's people out there that are wondering, what does Islam have to say about ICE raids? What does Islam have to say about bombing of people far, far away that have nothing to do with you or any connection to you? And how do you make sense of these things, Mehmet? What does Islam offer us as people, as believers, as fathers and mothers and brothers and aunts and mothers? What does it offer us to help us to make sense of these things? And I think those are questions that deserve an answer. And if I'm going to stand here on this platform and I'm going to talk about Islam, I'm going to talk to all over the world, and people from all places, north, south, and east and west, are calling in and asking me questions. Maybe I should crawl out of my little quietist cave and maybe address a couple of these things. So here we are. Where to begin? Where to begin? There's just so much happening. Let's start here at home. Let's talk a little bit about what's happening. So I live in the great state of California. I'm not a Californian by birth, although some of my earliest memories were formed here in California. When my dad was in the Seabees, a naval unit stationed out of San Diego. Some of my very, very earliest, if not my earliest memories, formed right here in this beautiful state. But I was actually raised predominantly in Washington State. And those of you who follow the program and my story and how I came to Islam and my background, you know all about that already, so I'm not going to delve into it too much. I came to California to live permanently in 2012 after I retired from the Army. And honestly, it was one of the best things I could have ever done. And here in the local news, especially in the right-wing media, Fox News and all that, California gets a pretty bad rap. People say all kinds of rather unpleasant things about California. In fact, if you were to look at the news today, especially Fox News, you would find a description of California that I can't even begin to recognize, frankly. I don't know what place they are describing. It's certainly not where I live. It is certainly not my home. To hear them talk, California is a burned-out wasteland full of burning cars and riots and so forth. And even where some of these things have happened, it's not true of those places. I mean, it's through a very small, isolated little areas. Boy, we've seen a lot of things happening lately. We've seen the National Guard sent in, not by our governor, who says we don't need them, and the mayor of the city that they were sent, who says they don't need them, and the sheriff, who was elected to serve the people there, says we don't need them, but our president does. And we have even some active duty Marines called up, which is a little hard to understand because there's this thing called posse comitatus, and I'm not going to get into all that right now, so it's a little hard to understand how they're there or why they're there or what role they play, but they are there. The purpose of their coming to my beautiful state is to protect federal property. That's what their stated reason is, and to protect people that are trying to carry out immigration enforcement, ICE officers, as they're going about doing their work. I know people have a lot of strong feelings about this, but I want to give you both my perspective on it as a Muslim, speaking about Islam and all things Muslim, and my perspective on it as a adopted Californian. I consider California my home. I intend to be buried in the Muslim cemetery right up there on the hill overlooking that ocean one day. This is my home, and I'm very proud to call it my home. I have no intention of ever living anywhere else. So I give you my perspective on these two things, as a Californian and as a Muslim man. The justification for what we're seeing today, the rounding up of all these folks by ICE, and then their deportation to not necessarily even where they came from, but to third-party states like El Salvador and other places, and in some instances to places where they came from, kind of stems from this idea that, look, you broke the law coming here. You crossed the border illegally, and so you're a, quote, illegal, and we have to round you up, and we have to take you out of our country. And they have been referred to by people in our administration as, criminals and escapees from mental institutions and all kinds of very unflattering things. Well, let me tell you, folks, that's not true. It's not true. I live amongst these people. I live closely beside these people. And they're not criminals, certainly not rapists or people from mental institutions. What they are is hard-working folks who have come to our beautiful state to do things like pick strawberries and lettuce and cauliflower and Brussels sprouts and artichokes, and to work in meatpacking facilities, and to wash dishes, and to work out in front of Home Depot as laborers, to provide a better life for their families. These people didn't come here to create trouble and create division and to hurt folks. They came here to work. They came here to provide for their families because they came from places that are very, very difficult. And they wanted a better life for their children, for their wives, for their husbands, for their grandparents and parents. And predominantly, they're coming here to do these very, I don't like to use the word menial, it sounds a bit disparaging, but to do a lot of work that, frankly, folks that look like me don't tend to do a whole lot of. That's the reality. Now, are there criminal elements amongst these individuals? Well, sure there are. There's criminal elements amongst every large population group. And are there problems in some of the immigrant communities, even here near where I live? Yeah, there are. But those are problems to be solved. The problems to be solved. It doesn't mean that we declare an individual a, quote, illegal, and then round them up and handcuff them and throw them on the floor and separate them from their children and deport them off to some third-party country. It's really rather hard for me to talk about and to witness and to see what is happening in this beautiful community that I love so much. So here's what I think about it. Here's my perspective, and I'll try to give a Muslim perspective too. Securing the border is a federal responsibility, right? It's not Mehmet's responsibility. It's not the mayor of Pacific Grove's responsibility. It's not my friend who's the mayor of Monterey. It's not his responsibility. It's a federal responsibility. And every country, Muslim country, non-Muslim country, every country has a right to protect its borders and to control who comes in and who goes out and issue visas. And, this is just normal common sense. Everybody knows it doesn't require a whole lot of explanation, I would hope. So that's a federal problem. I'm not a federal agent. I'm just your brother Mehmet, and a Californian. What happens once these people who cross into my country illegally, without proper documentation, proper visa, proper paperwork, and they come into this country, however they get here, and they settle in my community, and they register their children down here at my kid's school, and maybe somebody works here at the Home Depot as a laborer, hoping to get some work. And a wife comes and maybe she works, down the street here at the restaurant near my house. Or maybe they work out in the fields here in Salinas Valley, picking strawberries and whatnot. What's their status in my mind at that point, both as a Californian and as a Muslim? Well, in both instances, the answer is they are my neighbors. That's it. How they got here, that's a federal issue. It's not a Mehmet issue. It's a federal issue. It's something that the federal government has to figure out and has to police and control. But once they're here, and their kids are registered in my school, and they're picking strawberries out here that I put on my table, they're doing labor, and they're working in restaurants, and they're just trying to survive. And they're doing these very basic, very menial jobs because it's the only jobs they can do without documentation. Some of these people are highly educated folks. You hear some of these people talking like they're all, uneducated, et cetera, et cetera. It's not true. It's not true. Now certainly a very large percentage of these folks come from humble backgrounds. It's true. Well, that shouldn't surprise you. They're coming here from humble backgrounds because they're trying to make a better life for themselves. If their life was great where they were from, they wouldn't leave. Right? They're trying to find a better world, a better life. And so they're coming to be our neighbors, to live amongst us. And so once that happens, I have to look at them through a Muslim lens and ask myself, what does Islam say about the way I should treat my neighbors? Right? Fair? They're here. They live down the street from me. They're working at my kid's school. They're working out here in the fields near our home. They're now my neighbors. Well, what does Islam say about the neighbor? Well, what it says is that I have a responsibility to my neighbor. It says that I have to want from my neighbor what I want from myself. Well, what do I want for myself? What do I want for my kids? What do I want for my wife? Well, I want them to be able to live in safety. I want them to have access to basic services. I want them to be treated respectfully. I want them to feel safe in their homes. I don't want them to be afraid. I want them to live happy and full and beautiful lives. That's what I want for myself. What does Islam say to me about my neighbor? It says, well, Mehmet, you have to treat your neighbor the way you want to be treated yourself. You want for your neighbor's kids what you want for your kids. You want for your neighbor's wife what you want for your wife. You want for your neighbor's mother and father and grandparents what you want for your mother and father and grandparents. That's my responsibility as a Muslim man. That's it. Pretty easy. You know, the Prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, peace be upon him, spoke so often about the duty that a Muslim has to his neighbor that some of his companions, the Sahabis, they feared that one day the Prophet would actually require Muslims, when they died, to bequeath their wealth to their neighbors. Right? They were worried that the Prophet spoke so often about the rights and the responsibility that we have to our neighbors that they would actually inherit from us. Right? So we have this responsibility to our neighbors. That's where I stand on it, folks. When you cross that border into my country, that's a federal issue. It's not a Mehmet issue. But when you settle in my community, you become my neighbor. And when you are my neighbor, it's my responsibility to want for you what I want for myself, and to look out for your welfare as I look out for my welfare. To treat the guest with honor and with dignity and with respect. That is my responsibility as a Muslim man, full stop. I don't get to say, well, they're my neighbor, but they're here illegally. No, Islam didn't give me any caveat of that nature, none whatsoever. I don't get to say, well, they don't share my values, so they're not welcome. No, sorry, Islam didn't say that either. Well, they don't pray in the same masjid or the same mosque as me, or they don't pray the same way that I pray. They don't eat the same food that I eat. They don't listen to the same music I listen to. They're just too different, so I don't have to treat them as my neighbors. No, folks, Islam didn't say that either. Here's a little litmus test that you can use to check yourself before you wreck yourself. A little litmus test. I've used it for many years myself. Ask yourself this. Whatever it is that you're imagining to be right in your head, whatever thing that is that you're contemplating doing in your mind, before you do it, imagine that you're sitting down in your living room after doing that thing and explain it to your children. Explain it to your kids. Explain it to your wife. Explain it to your mother. And ask yourself when you do that, how comfortable you are. And if you're comfortable and you're happy and you're proud about what you did that day, then alhamdulillah, thank God. Keep doing it. But if you can't look your kids in the eye, you can't look your mom in the eye after a hard day's work about telling her what you did, then maybe you need to check yourself. Maybe we're not in the right place here. You know, imagine how absurd this is. Just imagine it for a moment. You're sitting down with your kids at the end of the day. It's little Billy and little Jane and little Sally, and then your mom and your dad, maybe even grandma sitting in the background, right, knitting something. She's so cute. What'd you do today, Dad? Well, long day at the office today. We went down to the strawberry field, and there's these people, they're out there working, picking strawberries. You've seen them before, right? When we drive to Salinas, to the mall. Yeah, Dad, I know you're talking about. Yeah, well, I took one of those people and I threw him on the ground. And they tried to run away, but I caught them. And I put some handcuffs on them, a woman and a man. And I put them in a van. And we took them back to the office, and we processed them. And we're flying them to El Salvador. And then little Billy says, well, are they from El Salvador? No, they're from Mexico. They're from Oaxaca, actually. They don't even speak Spanish, believe it or not. They speak this Mayan language. It's really interesting. But no, we're going to fly them to El Salvador because they're here illegally, and, we have this arrangement with the El Salvadoran government's going to take them. How comfortable are you having that conversation with your kids? How comfortable are you explaining that to your wife? And you think, well, Mehmet, you're being that's a little bit of hyperbole, isn't it? No, it isn't. Truth is, I've been kind. Because what I could have said is I separated a 4-year-old daughter from her mother while she wept and cried. I separated them because I can't keep them in the same federal institution. And I sent one this way and I sent one that way. And the child cried the entire time for her mother, and the mother cried the entire time for her child. And that child, by the way, had cancer. And I shipped her off to this place where they can't even take care of her. She's probably going to die, terminally ill. My dear friends, we're better than this. We are better than this. This is not who we are. This is not the country that I love so very, very much. I served this nation for 20 years. 20 years. You see my picture up there. Private steward, right there underneath the American flag. 20 years I wore this uniform. I love this country. I'm proud of my country. I'm proud to be an American. This is not who we are. This is not who we are. And I'm not happy about it. I can't be quiet about it. I have to stand up and I have to say something. My heart's breaking. My heart's breaking. I watched a woman on the news the other day being arrested outside of her child's school. And she kept saying, mi hijo está en la escuela. Es en la escuela. Mi hijo. My son, he's in the school. Because she was there to pick up her child as she was thrown up against a vehicle and handcuffed and carted away by men wearing masks. That's not who we are, folks. That's not who we are. So, what does Islam tell me about this? Well, Islam has some things to say about what we do when we see injustice. And the first thing to do is to stand against it with your hands. I can't do that. I don't have any power. I don't have any authority to stop it, physically stop it. All right? I have to obey the laws of the land that I live in and respect them and uphold them. I can't do that. But Allah did bless me with a tongue. And there's nothing wrong with it. And I think I have a responsibility to speak up and to say something. Because what I'm seeing right now, folks, is breaking my heart. It's breaking my heart. This is not who we are. This is not who we are as a people. And you can say, well, it's their own fault. Mehmet, they came here illegally. They get what they deserve. They knew the risk when they came. Okay? It doesn't matter to me. Because here's the thing, folks. I was just in New York just last week, and I was sitting at the feet of my teacher, Sheikh Luqman Effendi. Allah bless him. My teacher for many years, who I love dearly. I was sitting at his feet, and he was saying something about how in the Akhir Zaman, in the last days, which we believe this to be, that we believe to be in, that in this time, the sweetness has been pulled out of religion. Right? The heart has been pulled out. The emotion has been pulled out. And what is left is just the husk, right? Ritual and law and rules. Stern people with big beards looking over their glasses at you and pointing their fingers. Haram, haram, biddah, biddah. If you're a Muslim, you know what I'm saying, right? Forbidden, innovation. And they've lost the sweetness of it. Right? The sweetness of faith has just been sucked out of it, and you're left with this shell. My struggle and the struggle of those who share my point of view is that we have to fight to keep that sweetness, that gentleness, that beauty, the kindness, the compassion in our faith. And while it's been sucked out of our faith and our religion, it's also been sucked out of our politics. Right? It's been sucked out of our governments. Right? You take away the sweetness and the kindness and the compassion and the fraternity and brotherly love, all those things that get sucked away, and what are you left with? Ideology. Ideology. Pure, blind, thoughtless, heartless ideology. And what does that ideology tell you? It's the same thing as the angry guy with the big beard who's looking down at you over his nose and saying, biddah, biddah, haram, haram. It's the same thing. It doesn't care about the individual. Doesn't care about people or their hearts or what is right or what is wrong, what is good, what is compassionate, what you could look your children in the eye with a straight face and explain to them. No, it just cares. It's just black and white, left and right, right and wrong. It's happening in our faiths. It's happening in our communities. It's happening in our governments. We have to take a deep breath and step back. There are no illegal humans, folks. There's just people. There's just people. People trying to live their lives. People trying to support their children. People trying to care for each other. And if there's a criminal element amongst some of these people, like there is in every society, then that's a problem to be solved. But it doesn't mean that we throw mothers against the back of cars and handcuff them while they cry for their children that are sitting in their school classroom and wouldn't be picked up. It doesn't mean that we round up people outside of strawberry fields. It doesn't mean that we send, and this has actually happened, a 4-year-old cancer patient away, receiving life-saving treatment for terminal cancer. It doesn't mean that we separate a father from his son. My God, folks, what are we doing? What will that son grow to be after having experienced that? We're better than this, folks. We're better than this. Alhamdulillah, Islam came to liberate us. It came to lift us up. It came to remind us that we have a duty to our neighbor and to our guest and to the stranger who lives amongst us. Because here's the thing, folks. Give it time and someday you will be the stranger. Someday you will be the guest. Someday you may be the person who has to cross a border even without the proper documentation to save your children's lives and to give them a better hope and a better future. That may be you someday. It was us as Muslims one day. It happened to the very, very earliest Muslims being persecuted by the Quraysh. Where did they go? They went to Abyssinia, what is now Ethiopia. And they were the guest of the emperor there, a Christian. And there's a beautiful story. We could talk about it for quite some time, if we had the time, about how he wept when he heard the verses of the Quran describe the Virgin Mary. May Allah be pleased with her. And they were protected and given refuge during a time of great persecution. Listen, folks, I don't care where you came from. I don't care what part of the earth that you escaped from. I don't care about the politics there. I don't care about what life you led there. If you come into my community and you're willing to work hard and to be a part of us and to live amongst us, then you're my neighbor. And I hope that you'll be my friend. And I hope that we can live together peaceably and amicably in safety. And God forbid that one day I have to flee my home. I will have some assurance that maybe you'll welcome me into yours. In the meantime, my dear friends and brothers and sisters, let's live our lives in a way that we can be proud of. Let's live lives that we can sit down in the evening with our wives and children and mothers and fathers and grandparents and look them in the eye and we can talk about the activities of our day and we can be proud and happy. Let's be the kind of neighbor that we want to be. Let's treat each other the way that we should be treated. And let's be joyful. Joyful in each other. Joyful in Islam. In this beautiful way, in this beautiful, sweet religion that I have found, there is so much goodness. There is so much peace. There is so much hope for humanity. But none of it will be realized if you're silent. None of it can be realized if it's just talk and words on a page. You know, I've never given you, my dear listeners, a single book recommendation. Because what I'm talking about is not found in books. It's found in hearts. It's found deep in the hearts of men and women of good faith all around the world, who look at their fellow human being not as an illegal, but as a friend, potential friend, as a neighbor, as someone that we need to support and care for and trust, as a guest, as a welcome guest, even if they are a stranger, even if they don't look like you or pray like you or eat like you. Let's live up to the full potential of our humanity. Let's stop being guided around by our noses, by tyrants. Stop celebrating our worst instincts and start living for our best. And with Islam as our guide, make this world a better, more peaceful, more welcoming place for all of us. That's enough for today, folks. Thank you for sitting here with me beneath the fig tree. I apologize if I was a little too political today, but these are challenging times, and sometimes you just have to speak up. I will look forward to seeing you again another day beneath the fig tree. Until then, I pray that you be best. Peace.